On the news tonight, President Tinubu departs for working vacation in Europe. World Health Organization urges Nigeria, African nations to boost health spending. While on the foreign scene, DR Congo confirms Ebola outbreak with 15 fatalities. Good evening, and we're glad to have you join us on the major reports. I am Olubomi Ajiboye Agwola. President Bola Tinubu will today depart Abuja to commence a 10-day working vacation in Europe. According to the special advisor to the president on information and strategy, Bayo Ononuga, the president will spend the period between France and the United Kingdom before returning to the country as the trip forms part of his 2025 annual leave. Ononuga further said that the departure comes on the back of a busy schedule for the Nigerian leader, marked by key economic reforms, new policy directives, and diplomatic outreach. It will be recalled that President Tinubu recently highlighted unprecedented growth in non-oil revenues that has powered Nigeria's strongest fiscal performance in recent history. The president also directed the implementation of mandatory health insurance across all ministries, departments, and agencies, insisting that while government workers must be covered under the National Health Insurance Authority, businesses should not be unduly constrained as the act is enforced. The Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Initiatives Brands and Corporate Communications Manager, Ms. Matilda Johnson, says the federal government did not increase the price of compressed natural gas. Ms. Johnson made this known in a press statement in Abuja, noting that the recent hikes were introduced by private investors. She emphasized that the recent pump price adjustments announced by certain operators are purely private sector decisions and not the outcome of any government directive or policy, adding that the information was misleading and outright false. The Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Initiatives Brands and Corporate Communications Manager assured Nigerians that CNG will always remain significantly cheaper, cleaner, and more affordable than PMS and diesel, with the focus to deepening CNG penetration nationwide and encouraging broader private sector participation to ensure availability and affordability for Nigerians. The federal government has announced that the Nigeria Customs Service generated 3.7 trillion naira in the first half of 2025, a revenue performance that exceeded budgetary expectations and outpaced last year's results. Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edo, who disclosed this during the 62nd meeting of the NCS board in Abuja, said the cash represented a 12.5% increase above budget projections and 25% higher than collections recorded in the same period last year. According to the minister, the performance of the NCS is commendable, but he cautioned that deeper reforms will be needed to achieve the administration's ambitious revenue targets. Edo stated that the national single window will give customs the speed and capacity to process trade more effectively, boost revenue, and position Nigeria as a more attractive hub for investment. He explained that the National Single Window Initiative, a digital trade platform scheduled for full rollout in 2026, is central to the administration's reform designed to streamline import and export processes in order to reduce costs, eliminate unnecessary delays, strengthen competitiveness, and ease business for the private sector. President Bola Tinubu has expressed his administration's readiness to work with the National Assembly leadership to dismantle political and bureaucratic bottlenecks stalling the operationalization of state police. Speaking at the State House in Abuja during a meeting with members of the Northeast Governors Forum led by Borno State Governor Professor Babagana Zulum, the president said the time has come for a clear and collective path towards community-based policing that reflects the peculiar needs of different regions. The president stressed that while political concerns will always surface around the issue, they must not be allowed to derail urgent security reforms, adding that his government is committed to ensuring that the proposed structure will be insulated from partisanship and designed to strengthen safety across communities. President Tinubu also vowed to allow partisan politics or early campaign distractions to shift its focus from national priorities. He said the gains already being recorded in the Northeast, including improved security, resettlement of the displaced persons, rising school enrollment, and new housing projects, are proofs that the collaborative governance works. The president urged the governors to sustain their commitments to development and security while assuring them of continued federal support. The political momentum in Osun State has received a royal boost as the Olubadan's designate, His Imperial Majesty Oba Rasheed Ladoja, openly endorsed Governor Ademola Adeleke for a second term in office. The endorsement came during Governor Adeleke's congratulatory visit to the monarch at his private residence in Ibadan, Oyo State, ahead of his official coronation later in the month. The Olubadan designate's words carried both weight and symbolism, drawing from his own political journey as a senator and former governor of Oyo State. Oba Ladoja praised Governor Adeleke's performance, noting that his developmental strides across the state and urging continuity beyond 2026. In a rare gesture of commitment, the monarch, who pledged to attend Governor Adeleke's second term swearing-in ceremony, declared that one good term deserves another. He commended the governor for changing the narrative of the state, while visible progress also offered prayers for Governor Adeleke's continued success. Governor Adeleke, who was moved by the endorsement, congratulated Oba Ladoja on his historic ascension as the 44th Olubadan, promising to honor the revered monarch during his coronation. The governor was accompanied by top government officials and family members, including the secretary to the Osun State government, Alhaji Teslim Igbalaye, chief of staff to the governor, Alhaji Kazim Akinleye, and other members of the State Executive Council, and the matriarch of the Adeleke dynasty, Yeye Modupe Adeleke Soni, among others. Stakeholders in the educational sector should be involved in the review of the Nigerian primary and secondary schools curriculum before the recommendation and implementation, lest it will be rendered ineffective, especially for admissions into higher institutions. Adon from Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Dr. Femi Bangbadi, who dropped the hint while speaking to OSBC News, commended the government's efforts at revitalization of this sector with the rebirth of some old subjects that can be beneficial to the Nigerian society and the world at large.
Threw at me the reviewed curriculum that is just introduced. Actually, different subjects can be introduced by the government and by policymakers. But one thing we have found out about Nigerian system, especially in the educational sector, is that most policies are made without considering the far-reaching implications, side effects, and stakeholders that are involved. For instance, if a subject like animal husbandry, or even the history that was extinct before is revived, and other new subjects, it is not as though those subjects are not relevant as it is. But for admission requirements, we found that they have not been included into the admission requirements by JAMB. And most schools are not recognizing them. Most schools, for instance, if any school wants to admit you for any course related to Agric, they would rather prefer to take either Agric as a subject or take home economics as a substitute. But you won't find any higher institution requesting for animal husbandry or any related subject that is newly introduced. And it's just because those policies were made, those curriculum were reviewed, probably without considering the stakeholders that are supposed to be involved. All stakeholders such as examination bodies, WAEC, JAM, NECO, NAPTEP, and other examination bodies are supposed to be carried along. They are supposed to be included in the round table sitting to decide the relevance of those subjects and how those subjects will be implemented. I mean, there are different stages of implementation of policy. For instance, when you are making policy, after making fact finding about the relevance of those subjects that need to be newly introduced, there is a need to do, apart from pre-implementation fact finding, you can do intra-implementation fact finding. You're supposed to also do post-implementation fact finding. All these fact finding depicts you harvesting information from stakeholders and from the end users who are going to be involved in the policy implementation to find out to get feedback from them how possible these policies will be useful and relevant and introduced and properly entrenched within the system of the education of the country. So if those stages are not followed, we'll find out that the policy could be made, but may get to the point of implementation and in fact, in essence, they will not be implemented.
The World Health Organization has urged Nigeria and other African countries to increase public health spending to at least 20% of total health expenditure while reducing out-of-pocket payments that push households into financial hardship. Speaking at the Health Financing Dialogue hosted by the National Health Insurance Authority in Abuja, the WHO Regional Director for Africa, Professor Mohamed Janabi, said sustainable health financing is essential for building resilient health systems. Professor Janabi commended Nigeria's recent policy reforms, including the Basic Health Care Provision Fund, the NHIA Act, and the expansion of state-level insurance schemes, describing them as vital steps towards universal health coverage, as resources must be used wisely to create a fair and equitable financing structure. He urged policymakers to turn the Abuja dialogue into a watershed moment, adding that the dialogue should be remembered as a turning point where commitments become sustained action to build a financing system that is inclusive, equitable, and responsive. Reports say that the 4-day Abuja dialogue, the first of its kind in West Africa, seeks to revive commitments made under the 2001 Abuja Declaration, which urged African nations to dedicate at least 15% of their national budgets to health. The forum brought together government leaders, parliamentarians, development partners, and health stakeholders to address funding gaps undermining access to quality healthcare in Nigeria. At least 60 people have died after a boat carrying more than 1,100 passengers capsized in Niger State. According to reports, the vessel departed from the town of Tungasule, Malele district, and was heading towards the town of Duga in Nigeria's Kanji Reservoir. The Niger State Emergency Management Agency said that the incident occurred when a vessel struck a submerged tree stump near the Gusawa community in Bogu local government area. NSEMA's Director General and Chairman of Bogu local government area, Abdullahi Ara, said the number of casualties was still rising while rescue operations were continuing for possible recovery of missing persons, but dozens have been rescued. Ara added that women and children made up the majority of the deceased, while 4 victims have already been buried in accordance with Islamic rites. You are welcome to the sports segment. Ahead of the crucial World Cup qualifying fixture between the Super Eagles and Bafana of South Africa next week, the Free State Stadium located in Bloemfontein has been cleared to host the clash by governing bodies, FIFA and CAF. John Oyelakin reports.
There had been uncertainty over which venue would host Bafana's World Cup qualifying match at home after concern had been raised about the unsatisfactory pitch conditions at the Free State Stadium. However, in a joint statement from FIFA and CAF, both organizations gave the arena the green light to stage the match as originally scheduled at the Free State Stadium following further inspections by officials from both governing bodies. Following the development, Lesotho will host fellow South African neighbors at the venue tomorrow as they have no FIFA standard approved stadium in their country. After the clash, Bafana will then welcome Nigeria to the venue for the win or bust matchday 8 encounter next week. Meanwhile, South Africa currently tops the group standing with 13 points, while Nigeria needs to claim the maximum 6 points. From both fixtures against Rwanda and South Africa in a bid to revive their fate hopes of reaching a 7th FIFA World Cup tournament in history. In another development, Nigeria's Golden Eaglets have been drawn in Group B alongside Benin Republic and Burkina Faso ahead of the year's WAFUB Under-17 tournament. The WAFUB Under-17 competition, which will begin on the 28th of this month, will take place in Côte d'Ivoire. Also in the draw that was aired today, host Côte d'Ivoire, Niger Republic, Togo and Ghana will tackle each other in Group A. Meanwhile, in continuation of their preparation for the tournament, the Golden Eaglets defeated Ejigbo City FC of Osun 3-0 in a friendly game played at the FIFA Go Project Abuja Stadium. It was the 12th friendly game played by the Golden Eaglets as they intensify preparation for WAFUB Under-17 tournament. John Oyelaki, OSBC News.
Moving on to the foreign scene, Republic of the Congo has confirmed a fresh outbreak of Ebola in southern Kasai, with 28 suspected infections and 15 fatalities. Rahman Abubakar has details of the story and others.
Identified the initial patient as pregnant woman admitted late last month with bleeding symptoms in Bule. She died within a week, followed by illness among hospital staff and lab workers who had contact with her. The National Institute of Public Health declared a heightened emergency this week after the number of potential cases grew, as the Health Ministry officially stated that Ebola is spreading once again in the region. Provincial authorities first counted 8 deaths, but the number increased rapidly as symptoms typically of Ebola, high fever, vomiting, and various bleeding spread among others exposed during treatment or burial. Ebola spreads through direct contact with the bodily fluids of the infected. Early signs include fever, fatigue, and muscle aches, which may progress to severe bleeding and organ failure. Caregivers and relatives are particularly vulnerable during patient care or funerals, with nearly half of past patients dying from the disease. This marks the 16th time Congo has faced Ebola since the first documented outbreak in 1976, while some previous outbreaks have killed hundreds, and Central Africa remains at risk for recurrent infections. 15 people have been killed and more than 30 others wounded in a suicide bombing which happened in the parking area of a stadium where a political rally had been held. In a statement given by the authorities, hundreds of members of the Balochistan National Party had gathered for a rally at a stadium in Quetta, the capital of Resti, Balochistan province, when a bomb exploded in the parking area. The rally was held in commemoration of Atahullah Mengal, the former chief minister of Balochistan, who died in 2021. Provincial authorities said that the death toll had risen to 15, while the Islamic State militant group claimed to have carried out the attack. According to Balochistan Health Minister Bakt Kaka, the suicide bomber could not reach the rally venue due to tight security, and the damage would have been much greater if the blast had happened at the venue. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif condemned the attack targeting the BNP rally, which he said was damning evidence of the nefarious conspiracy by terrorists to spread chaos in Balochistan. Rahama Abubakar, reporting for OSBC News.
And that ends the major reports on OSBC TV. It was edited by Abdul Jalil at DBC. I am Olubumi Ajiboye Agbola. Thank you for being there. As always, good night.